During the 1920s, America was riding high. Fresh off a World War I victory over the Central Powers, America was becoming a superpower. America was experiencing an unparalleled prosperity that they had never seen before. However, on October 24th, 1929, stock prices began to fall at a rapid pace, causing panic and eventually the worst economic depression in American history. To begin, the Great Depression's short-term effects were monumental and affected everyone in America. In the beginning of the Great Depression, banks began to lose money, and the once prosperous stock market lost almost $30 million in stock. As a result, millions of Americans began to lose their jobs. And citizens began to lose their faith in the American government. Farmers were forced to try to produce a record number of crops to cover their debts, and some farmers were even forced to burn corn in their stoves because it was cheaper than coal. Since towns couldn't produce their own food supply, most people went hungry. People were forced to go on welfare, and most people viewed this as a tough pill to swallow, as the newspapers would publish the names of people that were on welfare during that time. While the short-term effects of the Great Depression were massive, the long-term effects were massive as well. However, there was some good that came out of this. The long-term effects of the Great Depression certainly brought some bad for America. A lot of Americans began to have an innate distrust with the government, causing some formations of gangs. However, for the most part, there was a lot of good that came out of the Great Depression, surprisingly enough. To begin, car companies produced a record number of vehicles, and the road infrastructure in America during this time was not very good at best. The production of these cars forced the government to improve the road infrastructure across America, which had long-lasting effects on America. Social Security was almost a direct response of the poverty of the older generation. Musicians and artists began to produce new music and art respectively during this time. President Franklin D. Roosevelt produced something known as the New Deal, which put the social welfare of its people as a central goal of the government. The New Deal produced many things such as mentioned before, Social Security, the Fair Labor Standards Act that guaranteed a minimum wage and required overtime payment if workers worked over 40 hours a week, and it also prevented child labor. While the Great Depression affected America in a huge way, it also affected the world as the whole beings that America was such an important country at the time. The Great Depression affected various countries such as Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe. The Great Depression affected various areas such as Africa, Asia, Australia, Europe, and South America. International trade between these countries began to fall by nearly 30%, and companies began to raise tariffs on imported goods. While the Great Depression affected nearly every country, Germany, Italy, and Japan turned to fascism and militarism. Adolf Hitler and the Nazi Party set out to restore their country's economy by eliminating labor unions, and they began to institute a massive overhaul on their unemployment that ended their high unemployment. Okay. While Italy and Japan's dictators searched for utter control of the government and citizens, additionally, communism grew in the Soviet Union with Joseph Stalin's leadership. His 5-year plan caused for rapid industrialization and collectivism of small peasant farms under government control. Stalin also exiled millions of peasants to labor camps in Siberia, and historians estimate that nearly 20 million Soviets died during the 1930s. To conclude, the Great Depression was one of the greatest wake-up calls in all of American history, and it changed the world forever. America and the rest of the countries around the world will never be the same as a result.